Excellencies, Mr. Kempe, Congressman General Scowcroft, Professor Teltschik, Professor Barbknecht, Professor Horst, honored guests, dear friends, a warm welcome to all of you here in the German Embassy. It's a great pleasure to have you here. This is a very, very special day for all of us, for this embassy, and of course for me personally as well. When the wall came down crumbling in 1989, thousands came to carve out and snatch pieces of the wall as souvenirs for days gone by. Often those pieces were pretty large ones. We affectionately called them Mauerspechte, or woodpeckers, or I should rather say in this case concrete packers. It is a miracle that some chunks have survived in one piece, and I'm proud that one could be saved for us here at the embassy in DC. Perhaps we should think about posting a permanent guard here to safeguard against the woodpeckers of the second generation. Actually, if you added together all the chunks and pieces of the Berlin Wall that are claimed to be original, it would be probably longer than the Great Wall of China. But let me assure you, the chunk that you see here is definitely original. It's the real thing. Even better, it's not just any segment, but it is one that bears the signatures of outstanding political figures who helped to bring down the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall. These include President George Bush, President Mikhail Gorbachev, Chancellor Helmut Kohl, President Joachim Gauck, Chancellor Angela Merkel, Foreign Minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher, Secretary of State James Baker III, Professor Teltschik, and others. There's one important signature missing, however, which we will promptly make up for today. In fact, chunks of the Berlin Wall tend to be heavy, meaning normally it would be more feasible to bring the signatory to the wall. But in this case, we decided to do it the other way around. We bring the wall to the signatory. General Scowcroft, it will be an honor to witness your signing of the wall today, and I hope you will pick a prominent spot on it. In my opinion, it deserves special mentioning that the wall segment also bears the signature of Lech Walesa, which puts the fall of the wall into the broader context of the collapse of communism in the East and reflects the important contributions of our neighbors made to the revolutionary events that unfolded in East Germany in 1989. This embassy is proud to be a part of this project initiated by the German company VNG and the Atlantic Council, who decided to bring the piece of the wall from Leipzig, Germany, to the capital of the United States in America. A gesture that symbolizes the strong bond of friendship between our two nations. And we are happy that the German embassy in Washington, D.C. will become the new home of this significant piece of the wall. The timing of this project could not have been more perfect as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which has become a symbol of peaceful resistance and the freedom and the victory of freedom over tyranny. The fall of the wall is at the same time an American success story. It demonstrated the steadfast American support for the Federal Republic of Germany during the difficult decades of the Cold War, through the Marshall Plan, the Berlin airlift, and ultimately German reunification in 1990. In this respect, the fall of the wall has become the icon of the German-American friendship and cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, without the far-sighted policy of the United States and the strong support of the US government and the American people, German reunification would not have happened the way it did in this swift, peaceful way. This was one of the finest hours of American statesmanship. We, as Germans, never forget that. Yet I think it's precisely because the unification process was so successful that we should make sure society does not forget how difficult it was to achieve. For many young people, transatlantic cooperation is less compelling or self-evident today than it was during the Cold War. This is a trend that we need to work against. The major political, economic, and security challenges of our time require the close cooperation of the West on both sides of the Atlantic. In an increasingly fragmented, multipolar world, the notion of the West still holds major importance. In this light, the segment of the Berlin Wall that we will unveil today represents historic optimism and at the same time is a constant reminder to keep our transatlantic partnership and cooperation strong. Once again, I'd like to thank the Atlantic Council and VNG of Leipzig for making this magnificent project possible. It's now a pleasure to give the floor to Fred Campy, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. And I thank you very much for joining us tonight, and thank you.
Ambassador Wittig, thank you for your powerful comments. Even more, thank you for the powerful friendship and partnership between your embassy and you personally and the Atlantic Council. You talked about how this is a personal moment for you. You know what a personal moment this is for me as well. The mother born in Pankow, Berlin, father born in Leubsdorf in the Erzgebirge in Saxony. I wish they were still alive to see this today, and they didn't live to see the fall of the Berlin Wall either, but for me it's personal as well. And what better place for this section of Berlin Wall to find its first home in the US at your embassy, as your embassy and your residence are gateways to the German-American diplomatic relations. You're right, Mr. Ambassador, that the wall has become an icon of German-American friendship. But as I wrote in my book, Berlin 1961, it also for nearly three decades was a worse kind of icon. It will for all time remain as the iconic image of what unfree systems can impose when free leaders and societies fail to resist. Thus, it stands outside your door here at the same time as a symbol of hope and a warning regarding the future. You were very right, Mr. Ambassador, to say that we should make sure society doesn't forget how hard it was to pull that wall down. It was a task that often seemed impossible. It even seemed impossible to people like Horst Teltschik and Brent Scowcroft at different times in their lives, I'm sure. I didn't think I was going to see it in my lifetime. And here they are. The two men who, as national security advisors, had live telephones on their desks. The two men who represented the trust between the two leaders of the time, Helmut Kohl, George H.W. Bush. You'll hear from them later. But I just want you to thank them and applaud them for the role that they've played in this great moment of history. Recognizing how much time and patience that task took should encourage us to continue the hard work of fulfilling our common dream of a Europe whole and free, articulated by George H.W. Bush in Mainz on May 31st, 1989. And I think we have to remember that vision, though the obstacles, again, appear daunting, just as they did 25 years ago. The sound of Beethoven's Ode to Joy rang across the Berlin skies this weekend, and 8,000 balloons lifted into the sky, even as Russian-backed shelling thundered through the Ukrainian night. We stand here today as Russia redraws European borders and challenges the international system more largely. And as NATO Supreme Allied Commander Philip Breedlove announced yesterday new columns of Russian tanks, artillery, air defense systems, and combat troops are entering Ukraine. And he said nuclear-capable forces are moving into Crimea. We stand here at a time when religiously inspired extremists in Iraq and Syria, but not just, are not only occupying the territory of sovereign countries, but they are at the same time beheading those who represent resistance against them. We stand here at an inflection point in history that may be as momentous as 1918, 1945, and yes, also 1989. The international world order that emerged following the collapse of the Berlin Wall is being put to test. Nothing will be as important in determining the result of that test than the transatlantic partnership and the US-German relationship that is at its core. It's for that reason that we at the Atlantic Council so badly wanted to mark this year's anniversary of the fall of Berlin Wall, not only by celebrating what we had accomplished in the past, but also starting to think about beyond the Berlin Wall. Our stated mission at the Atlantic Council is, quote, working together to secure the future, unquote. And we're exploring intensively how we can work most effectively again to shape today's inflection point for the better. This is about large relationships and large ideas, but it's also about close personal relationships like the Scowcroft-Teltschik relationship, and I would say now the VNG Atlantic Council relationship. This started a long time ago in a conversation with Dr. Horst, General Scowcroft, myself, and Horst Teltschik at the Munich Security Conference, where we explored the possibility of the wall coming to this side of the Atlantic as a gift to the American people through the Atlantic Council. And the collaboration has grown from that to the point that I was in Leipzig October 8th, 25th anniversary of the protests in Leipzig, with Henry Kissinger, with Secretary Baker, as the workforce of VNG bid farewell, or Auf Wiedersehen perhaps, to the wall as it went on its way across the Atlantic. And you'll see not only the wall outside, but you'll also see a stage was built in the last half hour because we discovered we needed one. So you can thank Mr. Pohl and his team from K&G who have moved this wall already 50 times all over Europe and now moved it across the Atlantic. Not only an amazing feat every time they do that, but then they built the stage in a matter of an hour or so out of the packing crates for the wall because that's all the wood they had to work with. So they're impressive, and I'm just so proud of this cooperation that we're beginning to build with VNG. This is the beginning of the relationship, not the end of the relationship. I encourage you all to go to Facebook and Twitter using hashtag Beyond Berlin Wall, and you can learn more about what juggling a 3-ton piece of Berlin Wall means and the meaning behind its journey. So with that, it's my great pleasure to invite to the stage VNG Board Director, Dr. Klaus-Dieter Barbknecht. Thank you, Dr. Barbknecht, for all your help on this. I want to thank Dr. Holst. Dr. Heuchert, please take our thanks back to him as well, and the entire delegation that you have here. We do look forward to building this relationship and doing together with you what small things we can do to strengthen the German relationship, which has never been more important. I also want to thank Alan McCarter, who runs Airbus in North America, our partners not only in this effort, but in all of our transatlantic work at the Atlantic Council. Please also send our best to Tom Enders and thank him as well for his support. With that, Dr. Barbknecht, the stage is yours.
Herr Botschafter Wittig, Excellencies, honorable guests, and I could say friends, good friends of the Atlantic Council and VNG. It's a pleasure for me to speak to you tonight. History is written by great leaders. That is the reason why we have asked George Bush, Mikhail Gorbachev, and Helmut Kohl to sign this piece of the Berlin Wall as a symbol of freedom in Europe. Great leaders are supported by great and wise advisors, like General Brent Scowcroft, James Baker, and Professor Horst Teltschik, who signed and will sign on the wall in addition to other signatures of great women and men who played a significant role in the process of ending the Cold War between East and West and in the process of turning down the Iron Curtain. But if history is written by great leaders, history is performed by the people. Brave women and men demonstrated in Leipzig and other cities in the former GDR in the autumn 1989 for a change of life. A strong but peaceful revolution which continued the events in Prague, Poland, and Hungary. Our company, VNG, is one of the leading European energy companies and was reborn after the fall of the wall as a free private company, located in Leipzig, in the city of the peaceful revolution. This would never have happened if many of our former and current employees had not participated in the demonstrations. We are thankful to those people. We are convinced that our responsibility is to make sure that this will remain in memory. Nothing and no one is isolated, but integrated in a broader context. The same applies to the more recent history of Germany. Without the generous support of the American people to build up a democratic and free society in West Germany after the Second World War, and without the support of the US during the process of reunification, everything would not have been possible. This in mind, the board and the employees of VNG, who signed on the back of the Peace of the Wall, followed the initiative of Klaus Ewald Horst and Horst Teltschik to send this piece of the wall as a symbol of peace, freedom, and gratitude to the United States. We are convinced that the Atlantic Council, as a guarantor of the transatlantic dialogue, is the best treasurer for this piece of art. The most recent developments in Europe remind us how important dialogue is. As a company which imports huge amounts of natural gas from Russia, and as Germans, we are happy that the fall of the wall led to good relationship with post-communism Russia. This good relationship is important for us, for Germany and Europe, and not least for the United States as well. But we should not allow new walls in the mind. We should not accept new walls in Europe. We should not accept a new Cold War, and everyone shall respect borders of sovereign states. The freedom of people and trade and the pursuit of happiness and prosperity, that has to be accepted and to be respected. Dear Ambassador Wittig, dear Fred Kempe, on behalf of the Atlantic Council in this case, my colleagues and I warmly thank you to make this event happen, and I thank you tonight to be our guest and the guest of the Ambassador and Atlantic Council. It's a big pleasure for me now to introduce Fred, what now? You do it. Okay. We changed the plan a little bit, so we have to organize it new.
I'll do it on your behalf too, Dr. Bobknecht. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to invite a dear council friend from Capitol Hill, getting here just on time, as is appropriate at the German embassy, and fresh from procedural motions on the Keystone Pipeline, but we won't go into that. But it's our pleasure to invite the stage Congressman Charles Boustany. Earlier today, Congressman Boustany represented our initiative, the Berlin Wall Initiative, on the House floor when he delivered remarks about the fall of the wall, close German-American friendship, and what lays ahead for us. Congressman Boustany, we very much look forward to hearing from you about the message you delivered. Congressman.
Well, good evening. My prior life before coming to Congress was as a cardiac surgeon, so German punctuality was very important in that profession. Fred, thank you for the kind introduction. Ambassador, Your Excellency, very good to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor, a privilege, and I have to say I'm truly humbled to be here this evening. November 9th, 1989 certainly is a date, a time that Americans will remember. And I can tell you, I was in the midst of my cardiac surgery training at the time, working long hours, sleep deprived, but I would rush home in the evenings, and first thing in the morning before I'd go to work, I would put on the television, watching CNN to see what was going on, because it was just amazing. And the images of the fall of the Berlin Wall are indelibly etched in my mind today, as it should be for all Americans, because it was truly a pivotal event in all of human history. I have to say that since then, I mean, the message that was sent was just remarkable. And since then, with reunification and all the events that have occurred, the relationship between the United States and Germany is a strong relationship. And as we go forward and look at the difficulties that we face across the world today, I think a strong Atlantic community is vital more than ever. And so the precedents that were started in the 20th century are even more important today. And so with Germany in its position today in Europe, a central location, key to European integration, a unified Atlantic community, and cooperation with the United States on all these issues is critically important. I know we have difficult issues that we are facing, particularly in the work I'm doing on the Ways and Means Committee, working with our administration on the trade issues and the TTIP agreement that's being negotiated. These are difficult issues, but I'm very, very confident that we will work through these and other areas that have been problematic, because nothing should interfere with this enduring relationship between our two countries. I believe that the wall, the segment of the wall that will be unveiled today, which is a tribute to so many activists and statesmen who paid, some paid with their lives, others put so much time into this. I have to say that it will be an enduring symbol of the strong diplomatic ties between our two countries. And I will close by saying that I pledge to work with my colleagues in the United States Congress to do everything that we can to strengthen the U.S.-German relationship strategically and economically as we go into this 21st century, and also to use that strategic alliance to promote trade and prosperity across the planet and to improve security, obviously. So it's a great privilege, again, a great honor to be here, and I'm truly humbled to be with all of you this evening. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I had breakfast with my wife in Leipzig. Suddenly she told me, don't forget that the Americans helped Germany twice to get freedom. First, 1945, after the Second World War, and then in 1989, when the Americans supported the revolution started in Leipzig, lead to the fall of the wall, and later to unification of Germany. And I answered her, I completely agree with you, in bracket, in some matters of political question, it happens not so often. And then I continued, yes, that is the reason that we will travel to Washington. I kissed her and moved on to the airport. And now we are there. We, my colleagues, my former colleagues, the piece of wall. This piece of wall is, from my point of view, one hand a sign of a huge prison in where I grew up, and together with me, 17 million East Germans. And on the other hand, it is a sign of a Germany in freedom. And when we get this peace, we took it and brought it through, or while traveling through Europe. We were in Brussels, in Prague, in Warsaw, in many cities in Germany, to discuss with people what these pieces stand for prison and for freedom. And so now we are there. And I am proud, I am happy, and would say, thank you, America.
Congressman Bustani, Ambassador Wittig, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to be asked to address you, mainly explaining how important it is that the last signature will be made on this piece of wall by my close friend Brent Scowcroft. This is a Scowcroft week for me. We spent just some days together at the Bush Library in Texas and now here in Washington. And it's for me still a miracle that we are so close friends still today after so many years. When the wall came down, and you have the proof outside that it really came down, it was a surprise for everybody. For us, Chancellor Helmut Kohl was on the very same day in Warsaw because there was the first freely elected democratic government in place, and he wanted to sign a common declaration. I was negotiating this declaration for several months, beginning with the last communist government and finalizing it with the first democratic government. And we want to establish a new relationship with this first democratic government within the Warsaw Pact. And the first US support we got was an American plane to reach Berlin on time, because West German planes were not allowed to fly to Berlin. Therefore, we had to call from Warsaw the US ambassador to help us, and he did. But when the wall was down, nobody had a strategy at all how to cope with the situation. There was no strategy in our government how to whether we should start now unifying Germany, how we should do it, and there was no strategy on the American side, nor French or British side. But and it was a risky time, because the main concern of everybody was that somebody might start shooting within the GDR. Whether the border police, not just because of an order, but becoming angry or uncertain, and because of personal anxiety, somebody might have started to shoot. This was a nightmare for everybody, and we have had 370,000 Soviet troops still posted in the GDR, and some crazy East Germans, there were some crazy, started some, they started to climb up the walls of the Soviet casernes, and even a Soviet soldier could have started to shoot. Well, it didn't happen. But what we were sure about from the very beginning was that we have a great friend in the United States. President Bush and his staff in the White House, Brent, Scowcroft, and Jim Baker in the State Department, and we knew from the very beginning we could rely on them. And indeed we did, relying on you, and you helped us from the very beginning, not just agreeing what we did, but with own initiatives. And sometimes both sides were a little bit skeptical. Is it the right move on your side? And you were skeptical, is it the right move on our side? But nevertheless, we were well informed both because if something came up, I could call immediately Brent or going to Washington and meeting him, and vice versa. And therefore, there's a simple lesson. First of all, we were since 45, you mentioned it, a safe country because of the military support of our American friends. And we stick together during this difficult time of 82, 83, when we discussed the double-track decision. And on top of the Secretary General of Soviet Union threatened us at that time with a third world war. Nevertheless, we were Chancellor Helmut Kohl's main interest from the very beginning was strengthening NATO, strengthening the friendship with the United States. He was very close with Ronald Reagan and very close with Bush. There was no distrust at any time between these head of governments, and that was the same on the working level. And secondly, knowing that we are safe, we could act, and we did it together. And this was a very successful example, and we should think about it. This is even true for the future. As Congressman mentioned, we are facing several new crises in Europe. Frozen crises, we call them frozen crises. But we know now that they can become hot immediately. And if we stick together, we will manage it. If we would question one another again, then we face difficulties on both sides. And therefore, Brent, cooperation with me, Baker's close cooperation with Genscher, Bush, Helmut Kohl are examples how successful we can be. We changed Germany, we changed Europe in '90, and we changed the world. It was your president asking for a new world order in '91. And this was a real revolution, and it was a peaceful because we stick together. Therefore, I'm happy to be here and to watch Brent, you signing the wall. It's high time that you do it because you are the last one. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Congressman, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to be standing up here addressing you, especially on this subject, one that's one of the most treasured in my memory. I'm not going to repeat what my predecessors here at the podium have said, other than to say amen. Because what we're commemorating today is an attitude rather than anything specific. The events were great. The hazards were deep. But it was the way we went about it, the way we dealt with it, that is key. And I think we need to look back at that and learn from it. The problems we face now are very different. But so are the attitudes that we're taking currently to solve them. Those of you who have heard other comments today know that Horst Teltschik and I had a private phone line. There weren't any cell phones. A private phone line. I pick up the phone on my desk and it rang on his desk. No operators, no in between. And so we used to talk almost every day. And I'd call him and say, you know, I was talking to the president a little while ago and he wondered what if ABC. And Horst would then talk to the chancellor. And so it was as if the two of them were just ruminating about the kinds of things. And that went on for the entire time. Fortunately, the chancellor and the president were themselves very, very close. But this allowed things to happen with confidence on both sides that never would have happened before. And I think that, to me, is the lesson I think we can take away from the Berlin Wall. We thought about all kinds of things as we were going through it. How do we make sure that the aftermath of World War I, World War II, and all this are not repeated? We didn't know. We had to calculate. But we went about it in a very systematic way. And it seems to me that that is a lesson for us today. And what we should be doing is talking about the current problems and how to deal with them in a way that we don't perpetrate disasters, but we improve the climate. And that's what we should be doing, not ruminating about the Snowden affair or things like that. It's time that we talk to each other deeply and sincerely, because the path ahead is not much clearer than it was in 1989. And I hope all of us, our two countries and Europe as a whole, can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your marvelous speeches here. Can I invite now everybody to proceed to the unveiling of the piece of the wall? It's cold outside, so take your coat.
There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Ah, wonderful.
Oh my goodness.
Clap in your hand. Bravo.
Under it or
No, on top.
above?
Chancellor Merkel took up a little bit too much space.
Merkel is already today.
Sign is finished.
Now we very good.
Yeah, you.